Hi, welcome back to another episode of Cold Stream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's episode, we're going to continue working on the 33 Ford Coupe. A few more parts should be coming in tomorrow. We've got some stuff to get started, but I need some more stuff. For example, the steering column is here. We've got the upper support. I need a different lower support to start taking that out and replacing it. We have some of the exhaust, but we don't have the mufflers. I started putting the grill shell on last week, but I need the hood to kind of finish position where it's at. We did have one radiator hose, but the other lower radiator hose that I used on a 32 Ford won't work on a 34, so I've ordered another one. Hopefully that comes in. Just a whole bunch of small things that I need a few more parts to get moving on a 33. So still a lot more left to do. Then on the 26 or 27 Ford Model T Coupe, I'm not sure what it is because it's one or the other, but we'll call it the Model T Ford Coupe. I did take the passenger car door off to try and figure out what's going on, because I think what happened with this car, the gentleman had a couple Model T Coupes. Ultimately, this was his best body. He picked up two other doors and the hinges weren't quite complete. So I didn't really know what was going on. I get a box full of hinges. There'd been some work done to it. But as far as I can tell, what they were doing was that they had the outer hinges on the doors. They were Model T. And they actually have some finger grooves into them. They're not like the Model A's or the 32s. But the hinge portion that goes into the car itself was missing. So from what I can see, they were taking apart Model A hinges like this, which are solid. I don't know if the camera lady can show that or not. They're taking these pieces apart. They were milling grooves into them and then substituting these Model A pieces to fit into the Model T. So that can work, that's no problem. I just kind of had to figure out what was going on with that. I've got two of them kind of set up so far. I have to re-drill the holes to mount it into the A-pillar. So I'll step through that. But what'll probably happen, or what will happen, is that I'll wind up welding up the holes on the Model T hinge, Model A hinge piece, sorry, and then re-drilling it to suit what's on the Model T A pillar. Have to switch the letters around here kind of thing to keep it straight. It's a Model T A pillar we're working on, and we're using Model A hinges on a Model T. So anyways, we're going to make them work. I've got some of it going already, so follow along. At the beginning of the video, working on hinges for the Model T door. Propped it in, and I've made the new marks where the holes have to be. So I'm going to drill these holes and not drop it. So have to drill those holes and fill the other ones up, and then basically make these new holes look like the old ones. Here's the center hinge the same way. And what I've done for the top hinge, I had one like this, and then I basically took the mini grinder and I cut these notches into it and then basically filed it to fit so that we now have a top hinge. Now once I have these two hinges in place, I'll put this one in and I'll mark it off. I'll probably have to cut it and again do the same thing. I think there's only 2 bolts on the top hinge as opposed to 4 on the middle and the bottom one. But anyways, that's what I'm going to do right now. I'll start by drilling and filling. And once I have them drilled and filled, then I'll cut and mark. So there's the next hinge, the center one. Drilled 1/4 inch through holes here. Welded up the 2 existing holes. Going to grind that flat, and I'm going to come in with a 7/16 drill, and I'll put that chamfer through into it. So we'll have the second one done here. And then we'll move on to the top one. So I kept on working on the top hinge. Fortunately, those 2 holes lined up where they're supposed to, so did not have to re-drill any new holes on the top hinge, but I did have to trim it off. I've already put it in the car, and kind of it's in good position. So the other thing we had to do is there were no hinge pins. I did have a couple Model A hinge pins left over from when I did the 29, so I was able to use those on the bottom. It is a 1/4 inch pin, so what we're going to do in the short term, we're going to take a 1/4 inch bolt with a long shank on it like this. We're going to cut them off and trim them and put them in. That'll do until we can get some proper pins like this with the knurls onto them. We're probably going to want to be taking them in and out quite a bit. Now the other thing is that the hinges, when they bolt into the A-pillar, in most cases, there used to be some inserts. I think you can see them in there, some threaded inserts. So on the middle hinge, we're good. The top hinge, there's nothing, top and bottom. So what I'm going to do, instead of putting a nut and bolt behind it, I made up some little blocks with 12/24 holes into them like this. So the plan is to use those. Once you start the threads into them from the outside, you don't need to put a wrench behind them. You can just tighten them up as is. Now, when they do get into the right position and the door is fine, what I can do is go from behind and basically tack those little plates in place to replace like the little D-nuts that were originally there. So anyways, I'm going to put the door in, hopefully be able to use those, and put them in the right position. And we should have a Model T door in position here in a minute. Well, got the door on. A little bit tricky putting those little threaded inserts from behind. Had to use the gadget here for catching things. Don't know if I can, here, I can show that. One of those little mechanisms there where I used one of those to hold on to the piece of metal to shove it up inside of the A-pillar. Sorry, I'm moving the camera around too much. I apologize. But there we go. We've got the all 3 sets of hinges all bolted into the A-pillar. And I'm not sure if you can see in there. Yep, you can see the little plates in behind there now. Some of them already had the inserts there, which were fine. And then on the bottom, you can see the 2 sets of plates down in there that are holding them in place. Now, the other thing that they had was they had like a chamfered lock washer. I don't have any of those. I have some of these chamfered washers because when you tighten the 12/24 screws into it, they actually pop through the hole. So they were intended to use that size of a screw, but with a little chamfered washer like that. So I'll show you one over on the counter here. I just don't have them. We're making do with what we've got. But right now, we have a door that opens and shuts. Now, there is a tiny bit of misalignment on it, but I think that's a matter of actually just pulling it up on the door as opposed to screwing around with the A-pillar. I'll mess with that a little bit. It might be an 1/8 of an inch, maybe a 1/16. Might be shimming, could do it too, but it's not really significant. So the little washers I was talking about are these ones right here. They're like a beveled or a chamfered lock washer that goes in those holes. Don't have any of those, but we're going to use these things in the short term. I'll talk to the guy that owns it and see if he can order them up. But for now, we're hanging in there nice and good. We got our makeshift pins, we've got our makeshift screws, and one door is now opening and shutting on the Model T. So on the 33 Coupe, got a few parts in. Got a new steering column that's 32 inches long, and it does include the blinkers onto it and everything else, a new column drop, a support for the bottom. Got some of the exhaust kit, don't have mufflers. We got the extra flange we needed. Originally, what we were going to do was use this style of a blinker mechanism on a straight column in there, but now we're going to use a GM style column that I've used on basically everything I've built so far. So that's got a generic harness onto it. Gonna have to get a pigtail that'll snap into that, or just cut the wires and hook them up to the right things. So Gonna put that in. What I'll have to do is actually make room for this or another style of column support to go in the bottom where the floor is. So we'll have to take the floor back out again. So it's going to, oh, fingers in the way. It's gonna have to go there. So what I'll have to do is take the floor back out, position the column support here so that the floor fits up against it, maybe even put something underneath it to cover it. This one has a column support into it right now, but it's too small. This is just a straight column and a banjo style steering wheel, which is really neat, but we need something a little further up and tilt up more for the gentleman that owns this. The other thing we got in was like a Bob Drake brackets to attach the 33 Ford grill onto it. So that was something quick and neat I kind of wanted to do to see how it fit. The Bob Drake parts are good, but I'm wondering about the holes in this Chinese radiator. Right now I've got it in, it's holding it in place, but what I'm going to need the hood to basically see if it's where it should be. Maybe it's got to come up further. Don't know yet, but we'll get a hood. We'll adjust the radiator where it fits relative to the firewall, and then we'll adjust the grill up and down. And well, if I've got to make new parts for it or weld some nuts onto the side of the radiator, well, we'll have to do that. But for now, kind of got it sitting on there. It has a grill. It kind of looks as though it's tilted forward just a little bit too much, but without having the hood there, I can't really tilt it to the right position. So if it looks wrong, it may be wrong. So hopefully next week when I get the hood, we can adjust that. But right now, I think I am going to, well, I'll pick something else to work on here, I think. So today I was going to start working on the second Model T coupe door, and I still probably will in this episode. There is some significant damage here where someone has taken the hinge off. Maybe that's what it took to get it out. But anyways, what I'm going to have to do is get some copper sheet, fit underneath there, and then flatten it back out and then weld all these cracks back in place. Said still going to do that, but I'm going to switch gears this morning. And since we've got the new steering column drop and two different supports for the bottom, I think what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take out that steering column. I'm going to have to take the floor out because I need to put the lower column support in the floor. And the purpose is that the other steering column is a tilt steering column. The gentleman that owns this vehicle, he's a big man, tall and big, and he needs a little bit more room to have the steering wheel flip up and out of the way. So that steering column is going to do the trick. We'd really like to use that banjo steering wheel. If we can figure out a way to adapt that onto the GM steering column, we will. But if not, we're going to go with a different steering wheel. But nevertheless, got to get the steering column out, get the supports in place, and then hook it up to the existing universals and D-rod. So more than likely, I think that upper D-rod, we're going to have to shorten it a little bit. That's no big deal. Done that many times before. But we're going to get the steering column hooked in permanently here in the next few minutes. So I'll show you how it goes. There's the floor pan out again. And this is what we're dealing with right now. So I want to put the steering column through the original hole, but I'm quite sure I'm going to have to open that up ever so slightly. We're trying not to modify any of the original metal as much as possible, but that steering column, the GM one, is I think slightly a bigger diameter, not by much, but still we're going to have to open it up. And then I'll pick one of those steering supports for the bottom, whichever one fits in the best. I've used both before. Maybe some people have a preference over one or the other, but And then the second thing, the steering column support up here, we had to remove the one that was there because it was too small for the GM column. Anyways, making some progress here. We'll try and get that first support in there next. Back on the 33 today, putting the steering column in. That's the next thing on the list. Lots of other things to do, but I kind of wanted to get this out of the way with. So it was pretty much straightforward, like I said, to put it in. I did have to install a new steering column drop. We're not going to go with a low drop just because we're trying to get the maximum room inside of here for the owner. And then there is the lower column support put in place now. Drilled a couple holes through, opened the hole up a little bit through the floor. Didn't really want to do that, but column wouldn't fit unless I did so. So we got that in place right now. This is a 32-inch column, and that's kind of what we needed. We needed 32 inches. 30 would be too short. It wouldn't fit all the way through the firewall. The other thing we've realized that the other column had a splined end here on the steering column. So we've got to get a U-joint that goes from 1-inch double D to 3/4 inch double D. So we've ordered that. So I won't be able to put that on today. But anyways, what I'm going to do is carry on with, I've got to trim the floor up a little bit in order for it to fit, and then make another piece of sheet metal that comes down. I need it to come down from here so that it fits between the pedals. So it's kind of like the opposite of this cutout. So they're going to overlap, and that way we'll get a good seal on the floor. So I've got that trimmed up right now. That is outside with a coat of black paint onto it. I'll show you that in a few minutes. But we're making progress here. So while I'm waiting for the paint to dry on the floor piece, I'm going to work a little bit on the Model T Coupe driver's door. This door is a little more difficult to fix than the other one, mainly because at some point in time somebody removed these two hinges, did a lot of damage to the sheet metal. I think I showed that previously. There was a lot of cracks, and it's pretty bad. Anyways, I've got them back in. I shoved a piece of copper between the hinge up underneath the metal so that when I welded through, I didn't have like weld drop through. Because basically I can't finish it from behind. So right now I've got everything welded and dressed pretty decently, at least for this job kind of thing. Going to retap the rest of these holes. The holes are 12/24s. They're not 1/4 inch or 5/16, but actually 12/24s. So got a limited number of 12/24 screws. Got some from a friend. Have some original stuff, so I'm hoping between all of these screws and the washers and everything else, we're going to have enough to do these. Plus, we got to put them inside the car too. I'm missing all the screws. There's 10 there, and I need 8, so I need a total of 20 of them, plus washers. So. Anyways, going to grab some screws, well actually chase the threads, grab some screws, put these in, and then start fitting the other part of the hinges. One thing I found really curious, and I don't know if anybody knows this or not, but on the back of these hinges, I don't know if you can see that or not, made by Stanley. Stanley makes door hinges, I thought for houses, but apparently they made hinges, at least for the Model Ts. I don't know for any other years, but those are Model T and maybe Model A hinges there, made by Stanley. I was able to put all the screws in without washers. They went actually quite nice. There was lots of chamfer there. The screws didn't push their way through. I actually had some shorter 12/24 screws I was able to use instead. Now, whoever did this before started machining or grinding some of the hinges to fit. So we've got a couple of these, they're semi-fitting. Looks like I'm gonna have to take some off and maybe weld build some up to get a nice fit. And then the third piece here, looks like I'm gonna have to grind these pieces away so that it fits in there like I did on the passenger door. But we're moving along here, like I said, the repairing the door so that the door part of the hinge fits in was successful. Everything looks good now. Now we just have to get the second half of the hinge fitting to the first half, and then we'll fit it in the car. Well, today I put the floor back in, hopefully for the last time. As I said before, one of the things I wanted to do is put another piece of metal behind this, so when the floor sat on top of it, it had something to go up against. Still was pretty rigid and sturdy. Everything's good there. So right now, nothing scrapes or whatever. Floor is in. Can't quite see it. I put the high beam switch up there for the moment, out of the way with one screw. And then what I decided to do was to come back over here and try and get the other set of hinges working on the Model T. So as you saw just a few minutes ago, I had to finish fit some of these hinges in here. They're a little bit loose. May have to put some weld buildup onto them, but we'll see how they fit in the car. Had to shorten this one up because it was too long. And then this one here was the one that I had to actually grind the grooves into it so that it would fit. Last time up, I used one of these and was able to just cut the top piece off and use these top screws. Fingers crossed we'll be able to do the same thing again. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the door, fit it in the A-pillar, see where we are for holes and stuff like that. More than likely I'm going to have to fill these up, weld to fill them, and then put new holes into it. Obviously there's no holes in this one. We'll have to put some holes in this one. And like I said, fingers crossed, those two will be good. So we'll see in a minute here. So here's the passenger door kind of dummied in right now. I had to use the jack to lift it up, open and close it a few times. It does look as though I can use those top holes like I did on the other side. Every reason to think that I would, but wasn't sure. So we'll have to cut a piece of this off in order for it to fit. These holes are fresh holes, like I said. And then on the bottom, those holes are approximately in the same place as what they were on the other side. So good indication that we've got some alignment. So right now, I'm going to pull the door back off. I'll pull these hinges out. We're going to start doing some welding and drilling and cutting. And then hopefully here in a couple seconds for you, you'll see the door on. Success on getting the driver's door on. A little tougher to get the alignment of the hinges this time, just for the holes. The door didn't appear to be as straight as the other side, but it's good enough. So right now it's a little tight, but tight is good. Those hinges there's no play into them whatsoever. They were a little bit loose as I showed you when I put them on. Everything in was 12/24 screws, except for one hole was actually stripped. So what I did is I opened it up to 1/4 28. There's a brass nut in behind there, so it was pretty easy to retap it. But other than that, all of the screws that went into the doors are all fresh 12/24 screws, and it opens and closes. So we now have two doors on the Model T Coupe, open and shutting with really good alignment. So today the steering knuckle came in, so what I'm going to do is attach the new steering column with the 1-inch double D on one end through the support bearing there down to the unisteer half rack. Done this before, relatively straightforward to do. The one thing that I always do on my double D shafts is I will drill a hole into it, so when the set screw goes in there, it actually forms a mechanical lock. So we're going to have a mechanical lock with a set screw. I'm going to use Loctite on the set screw, and then we're going to use the lock nut. So just to be sure it doesn't come off. I've never had one come loose, but I don't want to take the chance of one coming loose. So that's my tip on that, is just make sure you drill a hole in your double D rod so that you can make a mechanical lock with the set screw, not just friction onto it. So there's the final product with the steering knuckles put back in and the double D rod. Went from, like I said, 1-inch double D on the steering column, 3/4 double D, and a 3/4 double D to 3/4 double D. The steady bearing there because we've got an extra knuckle. And then there at the bottom. Now each one of these joints has 2 Allen screws, lock nut, Loctite, and they're not going to come off, not for a long time. So we're all good, safe, and it turns no problem. So one more thing done on the 33 Ford Coupe. That's it for another week at Coldstream Rod Shop. And this week's video, we worked on putting the 2 Model T Coupe doors back on. Kind of stepped you through the process of a few things. We didn't do any time lapse onto it, but kind of showed you what I started with, what I had to do to rework it, and basically modifying the Model A hinges in order, or the Model A hinge pieces to fit the Model T doors on the A pillar. So lots of letters there in the description and everything else. Hopefully I got it right. But anyways, right now we have 2 doors open and closing. The owner was up and saw them and he's quite happy with it. So we've got a couple more things we've added on the list for me to work on. We'll start working on that stuff next week. Then over on the 33 Ford Coupe, we got the new steering column in. We got the upper and lower mounts, put those in place. We modified the floor in order to fit around the steering column. Then I was waiting for the universal joint to come in that ties in the new column to the old shaft. Got that. And then we safely put in the new double D 3/4 rods in there, drilled our holes, and everything's all set up, ready to go there. That pretty much took up most of the week. That, and it's the time of year for me to go split some wood, so I had to split my time splitting some wood for next year. I know it's really hot right now, but that's when the wood dries, so I've got to spend some time on that. But anyways, we still have lots of things to do here on the Model T Coupe and the 33. So come on back next week, see what we're up to. Everybody have a great week. Please like, share, tag, and subscribe, and have a great week. Take care.